What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. We're back home and we're going to be recapping Sam Rayburn. The Sam Rayburn event was a lot better than the first time I went out there. Caught a ton more fish, but the quality just wasn't there for me. So the first day of practice, I went over to Buck Bay and was able to get bit right away. Throwing a square bill crankbait right along this little point, some lily pads, a little bit of grass, and boom, get bit. Worked that same area, and then I end up catching a spinnerbait fish. It was kind of crazy, like ate it literally like under the boat. So I thought I, was on something. I thought I was like, okay, cool, I got some bites. We can start working around, finding some more grass. But the crazy thing is the freeze that Texas had and a lot of the country had a couple months ago really hurt the hydrilla out there. It wasn't everywhere. Like when I went out there in January, the grass was really, really good, and there was grass pretty much everywhere. But this time, you had to really look for the grass. And come tournament day, I did find some grass in practice. The last day of practice, I found some grass, but it wasn't as easy to come by as it was back in January. And the other thing was that the water level was pretty high for Sam Rayburn, which meant there was a lot of brush in the water. There was a lot of hay grass out there, but the hydrilla wasn't as good, like I said. But, certain areas there was trees up shallow. It looked awesome up shallow. And the first day I fished up shallow a lot, caught some Cinco fish, some other kinds of fish. So day two, I was like, okay, let's go find some bigger quality fish up shallow. And I fished shallow a ton, and I could not get bit. And I got into an area where I had some hydrilla that was down deeper, and there again I found some grass and I got bit. But day two was a pretty rough day overall. Not a lot of bites on day two of practice, and it was pretty tough. So going into day three, I knew I needed a lot more quality and a lot more bites than I was getting. Day one, I got some bites. Day two, I didn't get a lot of bites. Day three, I knew going into the tournament there was gonna be a lot of wind, and I went to go find some wind protected area. So I launched out of Humphreys and I fished the whole southern end of the lake on that southern bank. So that way it would be wind protected. I hit a bunch of those areas over there. Not a lot of grass, but there's a lot more spotted bass over there. And I knew the spotted bass weren't gonna get the job done, but if I needed some fish, I needed to figure out ways to catch them. And that's when the Dual Molds swing head football jig really came into play, and I was pairing it up with that stroker craw, the 6-cent stroker craw, and I caught a ton of fish, guys. A ton of fish, and that's what kind of keyed me in on some things that I could do to get bit, because at that point going into day three, I didn't really have anything I felt was really consistent, but at least I knew that I could throw that swing head and I could get bites. I didn't get the quality that I wanted, but I did find some fish, I did find some bites, and it gave me some confidence that I could go out there and catch some fish. So the final day of practice, I knew I needed to find some better fish and more areas, because I knew that I had that southern stuff, but the fish quality wasn't there. I could get bites, but I needed to find some better quality. So I made it a point to go find grassy areas on some points, around some clay, and I caught some fish and I got some bites, but again, the quality wasn't what I needed it. And I was hoping that going into the tournament, I could just run some of these more well-known areas where there was grass, where I could kind of, in practice, I was able to figure out where the grass was. I could predict it. I could look at an area and then see on the graph that there was grass, and then I started putting two and two together, and I was able to run around and basically knew whether there was going to be grass there or not. It was kind of interesting how it worked out, but I was able to figure that out. So I knew that I could bounce around in that area and get bit, and I was hoping that I would end up getting a quality bite coming into the tournament. So going into day one of the tournament, I knew I could get bit, but I didn't have any idea what kind of quality was there. So I run around in my first area and I start fishing those points with the grass on it, and we were catching some fish, but they weren't the right size. Getting the keeper bites was a lot more tough than I expected it to be. I wasn't around quality fish, but I thought I was around keepers. So we're fishing around, and I end up with 3 fish in the boat for a really long time. And at the end of the day, I decided to go run around and fish some of that stuff that I had found on the third day of practice on those southern banks, the wind protected banks, because we did end up getting that wind. So I went across the lake and started fishing those areas. And in the last half an hour, basically, I'm fishing that wobblehead and I'm working it, and I cast that thing out and I'm bringing it back and I'm ticking the rocks, and then boom, I get bit and I get it in, and it was probably, it was the biggest keeper that I had at that time, but I was still only on 4 fish. So then I end up over by the dam, and I'm really working this little pocket by the dam, and I cast that wobblehead back out, and I ended up getting bit, but the fish didn't get it. So I was really frustrated about that, so I cast that thing back out there again, and I literally had ran out of stroker craws in the boat, and had to pick one up off the ground. I put that thing on there and I cast it back out, and it was pretty much the last cast. I didn't have a lot of time left, and I cast that thing back out where I got bit a second ago, and I'm bringing it back, and then boom, I get bit again, and it's the best fish of my day, and it really salvaged my tournament at that point, because if I wouldn't have had that fish, my tournament would have been done on day 1. But with that fish, I was able to come in and weigh almost 12 pounds, which put me in 36th place, which doesn't sound awesome, but 34th place was a check, and I felt like I was on good enough fish that I could go back out and redo that same day, and hopefully that would put me into check range. And then if I could get some of those bites that I missed on day 1, it would have propelled me up higher, because I had some fish on day 1 that really would have helped and really would have bumped my weight up, but they just didn't get in the boat. I had probably 3 bites that I really feel like were really good quality and big fish, but they just didn't make it into the boat, unfortunately. And when they don't make it in the boat, they don't count. It's all that woulda, coulda, shoulda kind of stuff. But at least I knew that I was in areas where there were some good fish. So the first goal for day 2 was to redo my day, weight-wise, because I felt that if I did the same thing and brought in another 12-pound bag, it was going to push me into that check range. I wasn't able to do that, unfortunately. I go and I start fishing my areas, and I'm catching fish, I'm catching fish, I'm catching fish, but I could not catch keepers. I'm throwing the Carolina rig, I'm throwing that wobblehead, and it's just not happening. I'm fishing around the grass, I'm fishing around the clay, and I'm just consistently catching fish, but I'm not catching keepers. So at the end of the day, I'm sitting on 4 fish, and I go back to that last area where I had my 2 best bites in the afternoon the day before, and I'm fishing around in there, and I get to that same pocket by the dam, and I end up catching a really small spotted bass. But what's good for my co and not good for me is that my co ended up catching about a 4-pounder in that last spot, and if I would have had that last fish, it would have bumped my weight up 4 pounds, and I really think that I would have probably cashed a check with that 1 fish, because the 4 that I had were not what you need on Rayburn. They were small, and unfortunately I couldn't get the job done. I couldn't replicate that day. I couldn't get another 12 pounds to get into that check range, and it went from, you know, having a really good start to not being able to finish, and it ended up putting me right mid-pack. If I could go back, I would have just stayed north of the bridge the entire time of practice and just looked for the shad spawn, because it seems like a lot of the guys that did well found those areas where the shad were spawning, and they were able to catch those better than average fish, and that's really what separated them from everybody else, is being around those bigger fish, obviously, and being able to make them bite. And when they're focused on that shad and when they're eating that shad during the shad spawn, that's a prime time to catch some big fish, and guys did, and they ended up catching them. And I think that's what a lot of people did in order to have some of those above average bags. As always, going out and fishing out of town, fishing these tournaments, I learned a ton, had a great experience, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. I think being able to go out to Rayburn twice gave me a lot of insight into how to fish grass, because I don't get to fish grass like that when I'm here at home. But going out to Texas, fishing that hydrilla, it really gave me some new ideas to be able to take to different lakes. It started to give me some ideas on how to fish lakes like that, especially if I go back out there. Lake Texoma was a good experience as well. It was really, really tough, but anytime you get to go out and you get to fish 6 days in a row, you're gonna learn something, you're gonna get better at fishing, and that's what I'm focused on doing. Is I wanna get better at this game. I wanna start cashing some checks. I wanna start doing well, making some top 10s. Those are the kind of goals that I have, and I'm looking forward to the next one. I don't know exactly when that's gonna be. I'm thinking about heading out to Havasu in September to do the FLW at Havasu. But between now and then, it's just going to be fishing around here, maybe finding some local tournaments, something like that. Not exactly sure, but we're going to be out here fishing, and we're going to be filming it, and I'm hopefully going to be entertaining you guys and hopefully teaching you how to catch some more fish. But that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed all the Sam Rayburn stuff. I hope you enjoyed watching my practice videos, into the tournament videos, and I hope hopefully this recap brought you some value, helps you attack some of the lakes that you fish. Thank you guys for watching, and big thank you to GCI Outdoor, 6th Sense Fishing, WaterLand, and Duo-Molts for sponsoring my MLF Big 5 Toyota Series content and making it possible for me to travel around and fish those tournaments. So big shout out to them. Make sure to check the description because there's a lot of discount codes, and make sure to support all my sponsors because they are what makes it possible for me to be out here doing what I love to do. And you guys make that possible as well, because without you guys watching this stuff and following my journey, they wouldn't want to be a part of the channel, part of the Instagram, all that kind of stuff. So thank you to you guys for watching my stuff as well. And if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. See ya.